question is, are the Iranians going to use this, right? Are they going to weaponize it and use it against us? And who knows? I mean, it's speculation, but think about this. That's a finite amount of uranium. It's a lot, it's a fair amount of enriched uranium, but it's a finite amount anyway. All right. At this stage, especially when you are operating against two nuclear nations, it would be near suicidal to load up a finite number of weapons with your remaining enriched uranium and conduct strikes.
Mm-hmm.
The Iranians are not suicidal. In fact, they are, among all our enemies, possibly the most rational of actors. I mean, bar the Chinese, of course. I mean, they're very, they haven't stayed in power this long through doing purely crazy shit.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics, a special one because we missed him so much. Andy Milburn's here, the man, the myth, the legend. I wanted to get his take on what went down over the weekend with, the United States bombing the nuclear sites in Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Obviously, you guys know what went down. B-2 bombers, 14 GBUs, the big boy bunker busters. And 30 Tomahawks from a submarine. Andy, what's going on? How are you?
Yeah, hey Dee. Well, first of all, great to be back, and I'm sorry that my compadres are not here too, because I think it puts undue pressure on the audience just to have me here, waxing lyrical. But on the other hand, I'm happy to do so. And just a couple of preliminary comments. I was caught unawares by the strike. No one gave me a heads up, and actually I was mid-flight between Tampa and Riyadh and spent a delightful 24 hours in Istanbul as air traffic controllers decided, or rather the powers that be decided which flights to cancel, which airspace was going to remain open. And so I got into Riyadh early hours of yesterday morning and promptly had to go to work, which has made my week so far delightful. And by the way, you mentioned Isfahan, and I do not totally arbitrarily want to say that that brings back memories myself. I was, oddly enough, and I may be certainly in a minority here among former U.S. veterans, but I have spent time in Isfahan, and I happen to have spent time in Isfahan during a missile attack, in this case by the Iraqis, which tells you how long ago it was, 1988, during the War of the Cities.
Wow.
It's a beautiful city, absolutely lovely, which is not making any comments about the strikes themselves, which I know we're going to talk about. So what questions do you have? Do you want me to just launch in?
I think the biggest thing, obviously the ceasefire, right, whether it holds or not, but I guess we could talk about that after, because the big news that trumped that, for lack of a better word, was the DIA assessment that got leaked and reported on by CNN that stated that the Iran's nuclear program is basically set back a few to several months. I think that was the wording.
Yeah. So, and to just by way of expectation management, I don't have any insights, and certainly if I did have insights, I mean, I do have insights. Of course I do. What
Sure.
I mean is I don't have any access to information. If I did, of course, I couldn't share it here. But hey, you will notice that there are many views on this particular topic, and so I will simply express an opinion. Before the strike even took place, U.S. former intelligence officials opined that the most that even the U.S. could do with the GBU-57, which is the massive ordnance penetrator, which is actually what we dropped, the most that we could do was set the program back. I think you probably remember those comments. And in fact, you've had guests on there, former agency guys, who said the same thing. Well, that seems likely to be the case. for a number of reasons. One is that when some of the planning of a decade or so ago, when the first the first time that the topic of striking Iran's nuclear facilities came up, it was it was possible that the centrifuges were within range, or it was judged that these centrifuges were within range of the GBU 57. But since then, and as you can imagine, the Iranians have dug deeper, literally. All right, and so experts opine now, open source, that while the penetration limit of the massive ordnance penetrated the GBU 57 drop by itself, admittedly, is 65 meters, right? And they estimate that the centrifuges in Fordow, uh, for example, are at least 95 to 100 meters deep, which means that they're about 30 meters on the outside. Okay. Now, there's a couple of ways to mitigate that. One is to drop two of these bombs almost at once. I mean, one right after the other, so that one penetrates into the crater formed by the other. And that seems to have been the tactic here. By the way, the B-2 is the only aircraft that can carry these things. I mean, they're 30,000 pounds apiece. So you imagine a B-2 carrying two, that's 60,000 pounds. Amazing. 15 tons of explosive.
Yeah,
that it's
wild.
dropping.
I think they said it's like 2,000 pounds of tungsten at the top of the warhead. Yeah.
Yeah, which which adds to its penetration capability. So, hard to say. I mean, if things had gone exactly according to plan, and one had been dropped on top of the other, in each case, I think 14 bombs were dropped by 7 B2s. Then, although not all on Fordow.
I think all 12 out of the 14 were on Fordow.
Oh, 12 out of 14?
Yeah.
Okay. In any case, yes. It it's it's hard to say conclusively whether that plan should have worked, right? But it is certainly believable, credible that they didn't quite reach the centrifuges themselves. I don't know if the DIA leaked report what it's based on, but I assume it's based on more than speculation, right? I assume
Yeah.
it's based on some kind of battle damage assessment. But let me just say, absolutely credible that that we've set the Iranians back months but haven't destroyed the nuclear site completely. And I can't explain why the Israelis have come out with a different estimate.
They just did,
And
yeah.
yeah, they were a little more optimistic. Uh, and I don't, who knows what the truth is, or whether we will find out in the near future. Of course, the the timing was as perfect as we can expect to get it, except that this didn't happen 5 to 10 years ago, before the sites had been buried deep here. And by that I mean as perfect as we can expect it. And I'm sure that Mark and Mick have already commented on this. There's been three things holding us back from striking Iran's nuclear facilities before. One is essentially for fear of repercussions, not fear, but for concern for repercussions from Iran's proxies. Hezbollah, but more notably the Shia militia in Iran. And that risk, I mean, I wouldn't say that stopped us alone, but it was certainly something that we took into consideration. Of course, the Iranian proxies are now on the ropes for the time being, so the timing was good from that perspective. Secondly, of course, you always run a risk when you penetrate an enemy's integrated air defense systems. You run a risk of being shot down. And in this case, the Israelis they cleared the way for us. And the third part of this was, yes, we were concerned about the depth to which the centrifuges had been sunk and how much damage we could actually do. Well, I don't know the details on this, but apparently the Israelis had already cratered the sites, which presumably meant that the the bombs that we dropped had less distance to penetrate. I don't know. I can't say conclusively again whether that part is correct or not. And it was also well timed in a sense from the point of view that it seemed like as though negotiations were going nowhere. I mean, let's be honest. It's taken 2 decades of both negotiating and planning and threatening to bring us to this point. If the Iranians have lost their ability to generate nuclear weapons, I think that's a good thing for the region. They have the the way that they threatened the region up to this point is by through a massive array of ballistic missiles. Oh, that was the other reason too, right? We were concerned potentially about missile strikes on allied countries or even U.S. bases, missile and drone strikes, and yet their inventory has been drastically reduced. It hasn't been obliterated entirely, but it has been reduced by the Israeli strikes. So the timing was propitious, but again, we're dealing with a physics problem, and it's hard to say how successful we were. Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you mentioned with the Israelis coming out saying that it set it back many years, that's from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission through the Prime Minister's office. To talk a little bit about like the geopolitical angle of this, because the DIA early assessment came out yesterday, and you need to get it? I can cut this.
Yeah, I'll step in. I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
So the DIA assessment, the early assessment that came out yesterday that Trump's been refuting pretty hard, pretty viscerally, I'd say, pretty adamantly, says that it came back only a few months, obviously compared to the Israeli one. It's like, is this Israel trying to like placate Trump to try and just to be like, hey, yeah, no, we did this and it worked, and the region's better for it? Because I do think it sets, starting from last year's bombing Iran, sets like a pretty dangerous precedent, like where Israel could just like pick up and bomb them whenever they feel like it.
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, certainly Netanyahu was urging Trump to do this, but I like to think that the United States did this for our own reasons because it was in our own national interests. And again, I don't think anyone can get sentimental about Iran losing its ability to generate nuclear weapons. It has proven itself to be a difficult actor, to say the least, in the region. But at the same time, yes, and we want to avoid, for our own interests, and this is me speaking, obviously not speaking for the administration, but we want to avoid being closely aligned to Israel. Here I am in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is an ally of ours too. There is a great deal of sensitivity about how closely from the Arab world here, how closely the United States is aligning itself with Israeli policy. I think we have to be wary of that, and we have to be our own actors if we are to maintain credibility in the region. And by the way, whether we like it or not, this strike did help bolster U.S. credibility in the region. We actually followed through and did something. We did something that was, outside Iran and outside Iran's proxies, is widely regarded in the Middle East, to include among Gulf states and Saudi Arabia, as being generally a good thing.
Yeah. In terms of blowback, do you think at some point, I know there's obviously a ceasefire right now, but Iran's got to be thinking about doing something, right? I mean, I can't really see them just cowering and just be like, okay, we'll give up everything, we need to give up, and you guys want our ballistic missiles too? We could, all types of like actual self-defense too, not just the nuclear program. Obviously the nuclear program's no bueno, but what do you think the blowback looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know. I do know that the regime must right now be feeling quite desperate. They're not. Now, let me rephrase that, okay? But they're certainly they're certainly on the ropes. They're certainly at a severe disadvantage. They haven't lost all of their ability to cause harm, and they still have a significant missile inventory. And Hezbollah, it's a matter of time before Hezbollah and even Hamas are back on their feet again. I mean, the amount of anger that has been generated in the last 2 years by Israeli actions, for instance, in the Middle East, is, it's not going to die away. All right.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a resurgence of these two groups. They're not down and out, but it's going to be a while before Iran can really flex its muscles again, if it can in the near future. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I don't know, but I just want to remind listeners again of the Vincennes incident, which back in 1989, when the USS Vincennes mistakenly shot down an Iranian Airbus with some 250 civilian passengers on board. And almost a decade later, the Iranians, one assumes, planted a bomb in the van of the skipper of the Vincennes, the skipper at the time, in San Diego. Turned out he didn't get in the vehicle. It was his wife, and she was severely injured. But I think, it's just an example of how the Iranians are willing to play, or perhaps that's the only game they can play sometimes, is the long game, to exact vengeance. But to them, Israel is the big enemy. It doesn't mean that we're lily white as far as they're concerned. We did just strike their nuclear facilities, but I don't think striking back in the United States is going to be a top priority. The missile attack on Al-Adid was a pro forma act done, as I think we all know, for the sake of saving face. They gave Qatar a heads up that it was going to happen. Only 15 missiles were fired, and they were fired in a half-hearted type attempt, right? It wasn't really a serious attempt. It was just, look, okay, now we're going to hit back. It was for domestic consumption. And, the Iranian media, state-owned media, of course, are trumpeting that we inflicted, or that we suffered casualties, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone knows that didn't happen. Now, if they really wanted to strike back at us, they would have gone after our bases in Iraq using Shia militia, drones, which they've done before to greater effect, or Syria. And by the way, bases in Iraq and Syria are not protected by Patriot missile batteries. The one in Al-Adid is. So it was a safe way to be seen to exact vengeance and look good.
Let me ask, why aren't those other bases in Iraq and Syria not protected by Patriot batteries?
Yeah, great question. Well, there's only a limited number of Patriot batteries to go around, right? And now they may have. My information may now be outdated, but that was certainly the case, a few months ago.
Yeah.
And in any case, even protected by Patriot batteries is not, when it comes to short range air defense, Patriots only do a certain amount of good, and they are not good at blocking drones or other short range missiles. And that's the threat really in both Syria and in Iraq, drones and other shorter range missiles fired by local militias.
Yeah.
That's not so much militia, but Iraq certainly.
Also, another bit from the assessment, and even before the early assessment got released yesterday, about the 400 kilograms of enriched uranium. Like, supposedly we don't know where that is.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a great deal of angst about that, and I would say this, okay. I think it was the right thing to do to give them a heads up. Okay, that kind of keeps things again on this, not a gentleman's playing. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
What I'm trying to say is that, hey, we're the United States. It's saying we live by values. We'll save lives where we can, but on the other hand, we are going to take out your nuclear program. All right, the downside was 400 kilograms of apparently, we don't know for sure, but 400 kilograms of enriched uranium escaped. Well, the question is, are the Iranians going to use this, right? Are they going to weaponize it and use it against us? And who knows? I mean, it's speculation, but think about this. That's a finite amount of uranium. It's a lot, it's a fair amount of enriched uranium, but it's a finite amount anyway. All right. At this stage, especially when you are operating against two nuclear nations, it would be near suicidal to load up a finite number of weapons with your remaining enriched uranium and conduct strikes. And the Iranians are not suicidal. In fact, they are, among all our enemies, possibly the most rational of actors. I mean, bar the Chinese, of course. I mean, they're very, they haven't stayed in power this long through doing purely crazy shit.
So what I meant by like not strapping like 60% enriched uranium to like ballistic missiles and shooting them into Tel Aviv, but I meant like, bringing them to, one of their shadow sites, or there is some reporting that Isfahan is deeper than Fordow, where their centrifuges are. So like bringing it there and like enriching it and continuing their program.
Yeah, I think that's always a risk. And we know of those three sites, right? But there's now reports that the program may be more distributed than we thought, that there are more than those three sites. So, the potential risks multiply. We did what we could with the intelligence that we had at the time, but time marches on, and the Iranians, as I said, are they're pretty smart people. And again, the regime stayed in power this long, and I'm sure they haven't planted all their eggs into just three baskets. So, I think we can go down paths that lead us to many risky scenarios that have resulted from this strike. But nevertheless, I still, I believe it was a good thing, even if we just set the program back, because it sent a very powerful message that we are serious about doing this.
Yeah. Barak Ravid, the Axios, not the Unit 8200 news reporter, the Axios reporter, wrote just recently, Israeli official with direct knowledge says that intercepted comms suggest Iranian military officials are lying to their political leadership about the extent of the damage at the nuclear sites.
Oh, right. Lying as far as it's worse than they're saying, right? Yeah. Again, who knows? Multiple reports, right?
But that also came out like literally minutes after the Israel Atomic Energy Commission came out and said that it's going to take many years for them to come back. So, I'm sure there's a PR aspect to all this, and like, who's winning the spin game, because you see in Iran what's going on there. They're touting it as like the victory over Israel Day there, right? Like they had like a whole rally and stuff. So,
well, think about the problems that the Iranian regime is having with its domestic audience. We've talked about this, that even in its pro forma elections, it has lost ground in the last few years, or the electorate has simply not bothered to show up. And there have been, there is a significant opposition group within Iran, and they're fed up with the economy being in the toilet. They're fed up with the IRGC's adventurism overseas, which is costing the state in financial terms and in terms of being a political pariah, and has done, since the birth of the Islamic Republic.
Yeah.
And remember too that Iran has a highly educated middle class. It's I wouldn't say unusual, but it's in a minority among Middle Eastern countries to have such an advanced middle class, and they're not. They've got to be careful how they exhibit their opposition to the regime, because, of course, we've seen how the administration exerts crackdowns But on the other hand, it's real, and the Iranian regime is concerned about it. You've probably heard anecdotal reports or even seen YouTube videos about locals cheering even the Israeli strikes
Yeah.
on Iranian military facilities. So the discontent is real, and the administration is concerned about that. So it isn't, they're not just looking at what they're going to do as far as taking on their geopolitical opponents. They're also wary about how they appear to their domestic audience right now.
Mm. Yeah. And they
The
are.
domestic audience does not appear to want war, even now.
Yeah. You could say that too about the United States domestic audience as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Well, yeah, 60% opposed. Only 16% were for
right.
us taking action against Iran until we did take action, and then I believe the numbers are much higher.
Yeah.
And everyone realized, oh, that was it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully that's it, right?
Yeah.
There was one more piece I wanted to talk to you about. I'm just looking over Twitter to see if something popped off. Hexeth just announced about an hour ago that they're going to task the FBI to investigate the leak of the DIA assessment. It seems like there is a bit of a back and forth kind of going on in the annals of government where, people aren't exactly willing to just go by whatever sounds the best, right? Because if I had to bet money, I would bet that it's closer to a few months rather than a few years where this nuclear program is set back. And I just don't know what the end game looks like. Is it just like every time we feel like it or Israel feels like it, we can hit Iran and
No, I mean, in fairness, I think, this was 2 decades in coming, D. I mean, generations of U.S. planners have planned this particular strike,
Yeah.
and it was conducted in a very sophisticated way. I think it was in that sense a one-off, and the timing was absolutely right. I don't know what the motivation is for leaking that report. It's kind of interesting, and I don't know if even if it was deliberately leaked. I assume, of course, it was.
Yeah.
And I find it highly unusual that there have been so many leaks of secret and top secret information from DoD in the last the last few months, the last 5 months. It's certainly it's a strange trend. I mean, it is to say it's unusual is an exaggeration. I mean, you don't really see that normally within DoD.
And going back, I remember what I wanted to tell you. Like, there have been reports of like the regime in Iran rounding up like 700 or so suspected Israeli agents, people that I guess help facilitate stuff for Mossad in Israel. So yeah, it does seem like they're very much cracking down. Also, last week I had a former Marine. I keep having Marines on this goddamn show. I gotta mix it up. John Hackett, who's no, it's another John Hackett. Okay. Actually, yeah. And he said they had a protest literally like once the bombing started. Like there was a protest, anti-regime protest. They started fucking snatching them up, and you haven't heard from them since. Literally within a day, while they're getting bombed, they were snatching up people who were like anti-regime with anti-regime sentiment. So again, like this Iranian regime isn't exactly fucking mellows and gumdrops. They aren't exactly great people.
The Iranian regime has kept people in line through executions and torture and mass incarceration since its birth. I mean, let's not sidestep this issue. It's a highly disruptive, bad influence throughout the Middle East, malign, and has been, and despite every attempt to alter its course, external attempt to alter its course, it has kept that course and has pursued a policy of a military adventurism overseas. at a great cost to regional stability. I mean, anyone who starts to get mushy-eyed about Iran just needs to look at the fact that the Iranians, and of course the Russians subsequently extended and exacerbated the war in Syria, which, has seen 500,000 deaths and 1.5 million refugees. I mean, more than that, actually, 1.5 million external refugees. I mean, just incredible suffering over the course of the last 14 years. That was Iran's playground. That was Hezbollah's playground, as you know.
The interesting thing to see is like how Hezbollah hasn't really done anything. I know they're in a bad way, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they still have some of their rockets intact, right? And they're very close to Israel. And it's interesting how they kind of not done much.
Well, I mean, they're probably having, I would guess it's not just by the rockets, but command and control problems, succession of leadership problems. Who knows? I mean, the Iranians never had kind of carte blanche, do it, don't do it authority over Hezbollah. Nasrallah was his own man. And we don't know how Hezbollah has emerged from that, how it is now, but it's certainly probably not the right time viewed by most Hezbollah, the surviving Hezbollah leaders, to pop its head above the parapet again.
Yeah, I could totally see there being a huge power vacuum there right now, right? Like people jostling for control, or maybe not, because like your number one target list.
Yeah, hard to tell. I mean, Hezbollah had a pretty well-designed succession of command. I mean, remember I used to say that among all decapitation strikes, the one was likely to really have some lasting effect was if Nasrallah was taken out, because he embodied Hezbollah in a way that few other leaders embody their organization. And he was, say what you like, but yes, a bad actor, but he was a highly talented, charismatic bad actor who wielded extraordinary influence, not just within his organization, but throughout Lebanese politics and indeed throughout kind of the militant politics of the region. I mean, he was an icon. And so losing him undoubtedly no one really thought that he would be lost. But losing him undoubtedly has put Hezbollah on the ropes for a while. And that is probably why you're not seeing any coherent decision making coming out of the organization, at least for the time being.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I mean, I'm trying to think. I think I'm good. I think I have enough, all that I need.
Well, I hope so. I'm looking forward to reappearing with everyone else.
Me too. I can't wait.
Period of time.
What do you think? Do you think Iran comes back to the nuclear negotiation table?
Well, I mean, the question is, do the nuclear negotiations go on? I mean, what are we negotiating about or for anymore? That's really the issue. And honestly, it was kind of a half-hearted approach by both sides, right? So I don't see there being more nuclear negotiations anytime soon, certainly not under this administration.
Andy Milburn, everybody, check him out. The links are in the description. Grab his book, When the Tempest Gathers. Excellent memoir. When's the new book coming out?
Oh, yeah. Hopefully my publisher's not watching right now, but he's just given me an extension to the end of the month.
Okay.
So it'll be coming out before the end of the year.
All right, great. All right, it's awesome. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Guys, help support the show, patreon.com/the Team House. You get both Eyes on Geopolitics and the Team House completely ad-free. And a lot more perks that go with it. Of course, remember, check out Andy. His links are in the description. Andy's got a Substack too. It's good. And thanks, Andy. This is awesome, as usual.
Yeah, all the best, everyone. See you again in a few days. Thanks, D.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/theteamhouse. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of the Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page. And there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.